Something has always bothered me about Enryu specifically. Pentamenon applies to this to some extent, which I'll explain in a bit, but there's something about Enryu and his existence in Tower of God that just doesn't make any sense to me. And maybe it's just me and my own perspective on the way Enryu is described and the whole Floor of Death situation and Enryu's relation to other characters, but there's something missing here and I want to figure out what it is. Aside from Jihad and the 12 Great Warriors, there are only 4 Irregulars in the entire story. You got Bam and Rachel, Pentamenon, and Enryu.
How did I forget about Yurik freaking Mizuno? God, that's embarrassing.
They're all from outside the tower, and they all have these crazy powers, or at least they all have potential. They can break the rules of the tower, they can learn Shinsu Black Hole Sphere, Shinwanryu. They can do things that ordinary regulars and rankers cannot, excluding Rachel, because she's dumb. But even she applies to some extent, and Enryu is a part of that. Enryu is the number 2 of the entire tower. He's the one responsible for killing the administrator on the 43rd floor, and there are a lot of theories surrounding Enryu. We know he's one of the strongest people in the tower, stronger than Jihad, stronger than Yurik, because he's the only one who's ever killed an administrator in the tower's history. Now, what's weird about this isn't the other theories we've made, for example, like Enryu and the Red Witches, are they connected somehow? It's not that. Like, we've talked enough about that. What weirds me out about Enryu is how does he even do what he did? Why does he even show up on the Floor of Death? Because we know that Enryu is connected to the outside god as some kind of messenger or servant or there's something there between Enryu and the outside god that's pretty much confirmed as far as the lore goes. It's at least generally believed. And so, knowing that, it does make sense why Enryu arrives on the Floor of Death. We know the Floor of Death was the home of Bam and Arlen and V. They all lived there together, but of course stuff happened and Bam was killed, V died, like all kinds of stuff happened, and then Arlen left the tower. But there was still an altar left behind for Arlen, and people would basically come to the altar and show respect to Arlen. But at some point, probably a long time ago, considering the name Arlen is kind of lost in history, similar to the Hand of Arlen, that statue, right? Which was also blown up, by the way. Lots of theories there about Shia and if that was intentional. But regardless, when people started desecrating that altar, that is when Enryu showed up. Now keep this in mind. Before this event, and after this event, Enryu hasn't done anything. As far as notable historic moments go, moments that would be recorded in the tower's history, Enryu has literally not done a single thing outside of this event. The way it's implied is that no one even knew who he was. Enryu wasn't some famous ranker or anything. He just showed up when people were basically trashing on Arlen's altar, and then he killed everybody, including the administrator when the administrator was pissed off. Arlen and the outside god have a connection. She offered Bam to the outside god, and the outside god resurrected Bam. Then we don't really know what happened after that, but somehow Bam and Rachel entered the tower. So we know Arlen and the outside god are connected, so that could be why Enryu was maybe sent here by the outside god. Maybe Enryu chose to do this of his own volition, but the part that doesn't make sense to me is how he showed up there. Because the way that Enryu is described in the story, it implies that Enryu, it doesn't even imply it, it's confirmed that Enryu is a ranker. He's an irregular, so he's from the outside. I was considering if he's a resident of the tower, but that can't be. He's an irregular, right? We'll talk about that in a bit too. He's literally from the outside. So, okay, did he enter the tower and then become a ranker? Or was he given the title of ranker just because of this one feat? Was this one feat so incredible that they were like, I guess you're a ranker now, without him having reached the top floor? Maybe after this event he reached the top floor and that explains why he's a ranker, because we know Pentamenon basically did that. He basically just showed up on the 134th floor, talked to Jihad, and then was never seen again. Is it similar to that, or what else could have happened here? Maybe he already was in the tower to begin with. Maybe he was already a regular or a ranker, but was sort of not very known, not very famous, and then he did this big event and that's why he shot up in the ranks? But that's weird to me. That implies that the outside god sent Enryu in a long time ago, and that implies that even though Enryu is in the tower, they still keep in touch. somehow. Now, what if Enryu was a resident of the tower, like I said, and then he left the tower, right? And that explains why he's so adept at using Shinsu and everything. And then he connected with the outside god and then was sent back in? But again, that doesn't make any sense because we know he is in Irregular, which means he's from the outside. Yurik is from the outside, and Rachel, and Pentamonum, and Enryu, and Jihad, and all of them. They weren't born they weren't born in the tower. As far as we're aware, they came from the outside. The only exception is Bomb, who was born in the tower, was killed, and then was resurrected outside of the tower before he came back in. It's still possible if he was born there, left, re-entered, became a regular, and then a ranker, but it doesn't make sense. How could he have become a regular and then done this big event? Do you get what I'm saying? There's a missing piece here, simply because he's a ranker. Unless, again, they just give him that title because he's so powerful and did this crazy thing. That doesn't make sense to me either, though, because imagine right now, in Tower of God, Bomb kills an administrator, okay? It's crazy. He kills an administrator, or maybe he kills, a family head. He does something so insane, similar to what Enryu did. Would they just all of a sudden say, oh, he's a high ranker now, even though he hasn't climbed the tower? No, that doesn't make any sense to me. So the only explanation is that Enryu entered the tower through a portal, or he entered on the second floor and then just climbed in a day to get to the 43rd floor. Unless this desecration thing has been happening for a while, but that doesn't make any sense. And then afterwards said, hey, I'm gonna climb, and then became a ranker. Would they even let him? He just killed an administrator. I guess they would. What choice do they have? He's just gonna kill them. He's the second strongest being ever to exist in the universe. So, it's just so weird to me. Do you get what I'm saying? Maybe I'm focusing so hard on something so trivial, but I can't wrap my head around the details of what happened here. And that's just it, right? These are details. This isn't something so important that the story and the lore breaks unless it's explained. But that doesn't mean it doesn't bother me. It doesn't mean there's still something missing. So we have a few options here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and which one you think is most likely. Option A is that he entered the tower as an irregular and then climbed and then as a ranker went to the 43rd floor and did this thing, thereby shooting him up in the ranks, which would mean that Pentamonum sent him in a long time ago. Whatever details are there, he was already a ranker beforehand. That's option A. Option B is that when this desecration stuff started happening, the one outside god person, whatever, sent Enryu through a portal or somehow sent Enryu to the 43rd floor directly. And then he did this event that was so crazy that they had to give him a title of high ranker because it was just so legendary what he did. Option C is similar to that, but instead, after he does the event, he then continues his climb and then becomes a ranker, and then they shoot him up in the ranks, and then we never see him again. What do you think is most likely? I think there's something missing here. I'd be curious to know if you think it's as big a deal as I'm making it out to be. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.